Hi, this is Shamal Sarkar, and this is my first video on photography for beginners. Now, I've been facing many questions from my juniors, from my friends, relatives, that how to teach photography in a layman's language. So there are books, there are lots of videos on YouTube, but they are for mature people, or say if you know photography, you can benefit, you can advance your knowledge. But this is but I'm most of the people are perplexed with the idea of how to start photography. So, as I call it, photography for beginners. So, today, my first lesson, first video, I have a Nikon 750, and also I have a Canon. Now, in first of all, this lesson is for SLR cameras. For mobile, you aim and shoot, so it's not necessary to much of you can use your techniques or your skills. So we start with very basic SLR cameras. So we have here what we have here. We have say we have on the left hand side there is a M, which is fully manual. Then comes A is for aperture priority. Then comes your S is for shutter priority. Then comes your P. There P is for program mode. It's also a type of auto photography, but where camera is a little program for you for advanced cameras. Similarly, in a Canon, we have here, let us have a look. We have here, say, manual. I hope it's prominent. There is a manual there. Then comes AV. AV comes for aperture priority. For Canon, instead of A, they write AV, and then they write a TV. TV is for shutter priority. And next comes P is program mode, and there are certain effects which we'll discuss later. Now, first of all, we are giving it fully automatic. That's a auto. There's normally a separate button on the Nikon is left hand, on the Nikon is left hand side, and on the Canon it's right hand side. So it can be we learn the terms. One is automatic, where you have nothing to do. Whatever camera sees, camera just puts it on. I mean, that's as good as taking photo in a mobile. Now, next comes your aperture priority. In fact, my suggestion will be for the beginners, try with this aperture priority, that is A in your Nikon, and AV in your Canon. This is your Canon, this is AV, right? So, what is why say so? Shutter speed normally is I'll come discuss shutter speed in my next video. In aperture priority, there are certain measures. Say if we certain numbers we find here, when we put the camera on, we go to the screen. There are live modes. Sorry. Now we come to the issue. Now what is an aperture? Aperture is the whole. What is photography? First of all, it's light. For light, there are three settings we have. First is the your shutter, your aperture. Aperture means the hole. To light come through to the sensor or the film, there's a hole through which the light comes in. Now that hole is called aperture, as simple as that. So larger the hole, you say the higher aperture. You say the bigger the hole, we say the lesser the aperture, and smaller the hole, you say higher the aperture. Aperture normally starts from 2.8 and but most of the cameras have aperture from 3.5. Let us show here. Say this camera of mine, it has f4. It starts from f4 and is it visible? Now it goes from f4 to f4 or it will be here. Let us look at the aperture. We have 4. From 4 it starts. It's 4 aperture. It's seen. Then we have 5, 5.6, 6.3, 7.1, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14, 16, 20, 22, up to lakhs. So this is the on the front. You can see. You can also see it from the live view. If you are on the live view, you can see at the bottom of the camera, you see this f22, it goes down 20, 18, 14, 9, 8, 7, goes up to 4, because this camera has shortest the biggest hole, the shortest aperture f4, and it has highest up to 22. So it is also visible at your back screen. You can see it inside the camera, and also you can see it on the top of the camera here. So at the top of the camera, you see here it has it goes on increasing. Is visible now. There are a lot of reflections. $50, 10, 20, and it goes up to 4. It goes up to 4. Right. So now what are these figures? What does these figures mean? At f4, your hole is the highest. It goes, I don't know why, it goes inversely proportional. So at 4, the whole of the camera is at the biggest, and at 22, or if your camera has 32, it is the lowest. So you have to choose an aperture between f4 to f22 or f32, and some cameras have 2.8 also. So between 2.8 to 32, depending which camera you are using. So higher the lens, it goes up to 2.8. There are some lenses 1.4 even, but that's not for professionals. We get normally 3.5 to 22. Now the question is which one to use. That is where the aperture priority comes in. What the aperture priority does, in aperture priority, you select the aperture, the hole, and the camera automatically fixes the shutter speed, but at what rate the shutter will fall. There are two things. One is the hole here, and as the shutter speed. So two options are possible. You open the hole wider and let have a fast shutter speed, or have a smaller hole and have a slow shutter speed. Both will purpose the same purpose. Both are equivalent. So, because the amount of light coming to the sensor or to the film, in the old days it used to be film, nowadays it's a sensor. The light coming to the sensor depends on the quantum of light. So it will depend two things. Bigger your hole, bigger light will come. Smaller your hole, smaller light will come. If smaller light comes, so your shutter speed has to be adjusted accordingly. So in shutter aperture priority, you fix the hole or the aperture, and the camera itself fixes the shutter speed. Now, then if you can open the hole wider and move the shutter faster, or if you can make the hole smaller and use a slower shutter speed, what's the difference? There comes the term, the biggest term in photography according to me is a term called, noted down, depth of field. DEPTH, depth of FIELD, field. What does it mean? Putting again beginner's language is that what you want. Say you have a person standing in front of a big monument. You want the person also, you want the monument also, or you want simply a nice portrait. The background should not be cluttered, background should not distract, a plain canvas. So that is where the depth of field comes into play. So higher the aperture, please note, higher the aperture, your background is more blurred, it goes away. Lower the aperture, your background is more prominent. So if you want to focus a person and also the monument or the hill or a scenery at the back, you use a smaller hole, that is a higher aperture, like say 8, 11, 16, 22 onwards. And if you want the background should not be, I don't want the background, I want a nice clean picture, then put the aperture the highest you have, 2.8, 3.5 or 4, and shutter speed accordingly adjusted by the camera itself. So you get a nice picture where your background is totally erased. In this picture, I wanted, this is my wife Tripti and my model for last maybe 44 years. Now I wanted a clean portrait of Tripti and didn't want the background to distract. So it was put at the highest possible aperture, and you can see the whole, there is no background. It's a clear, clean slate, a very haze color is only there. In this picture again, I wanted the snow-clad mountains as well as Tripti. So what to do? So the aperture was put at the lowest possible. It was a bright sunny day, so I could put at 22, so or maybe 20, and I can see the snow-clad mountains and also Tripti at the same time. Look at this picture. This is a nice portrait with no clattering or distracting background. We have a clean slate background, just a dash of colors. Same here, we don't want the distracting background. Now if you are sitting in front of Eiffel Tower, you don't want that to be blurred away. So this is Tripti sitting in front of Eiffel Tower. Another technique is go away from your statue or monument. I have found some people standing below the monument or a statue or an artifact and taking photograph from 30, 40, 50 feet away to cover the whole thing. The picture will become very small. Then you won't be able to you have to trace the picture by microscope. That's not your object. So what do we do? Put your object away from your monument, structure, hills, so that your object is nearby and the background is far away, so that you can cover the whole. You can have a nice picture and also cover the background also. Now here in this case, Tripti is standing in front of Montmartre church in Paris. So here we'd like to take the picture of the church. Also is a very nice structure, white structure, beautiful structure, and also the object, our model. So it was put at the highest possible aperture possible. Here also we wanted the lake. This is the Annecy Lake in France towards Switzerland border. There are snow-clad peaks around. It's a nice, huge lake. We wanted the lake. We wanted the boats. We wanted the snow-clad mountain, and of course the object or the model Tripti. So here Tripti is prominent. So also the background. Here again one of our friends, Dr. Chatterjee, she wanted a portrait. So in the air, the sea beach, so there was very breezy. The hair was distracting, so it was the scarf was used to put the hairs in shape, and the background was blurred to have a nice clean portrait. Now here again, in view of the high aperture, the other people, they are, even in a crowd you are taking a picture, you don't want the other people to be included in that distracts the picture. So if you use a very high aperture, I mean big hole, biggest possible hole, even if the other people are seen in the frame, they are blurred away. You can see that they are blurred away, totally blurred away. So that also helps in a crowd. That helps you to use a smaller aperture or say big hole. So friends, coming back to the camera, I have shown you on the right hand side there is a window where you can see the aperture, and also you can see at the back of the camera, it also appears at the back of the camera. So I have already told you what is the use of the aperture to when you use the aperture, what is the necessity. So repeating is the depth of field which decides the quality of the picture you want. So if you want your background to be very clean, cleared away, very neat background, you use a very big hole or a higher, or a you use a smaller aperture or a big hole. If you want the background monument to also to be taken along with your model or of your object, then we say that first of all, go away from the structure as much as you can, so that your model covers a good portion of the frame, at least she or he is visible, and you also take the monument or the hill or the scenery at the background if you use a smaller hole or a higher aperture. Say so at f4, or when your number denote 4, you have a big hole, and at 22 you have a smallest hole. And some cameras have 3.5, some cameras have 32. So depending on the light conditions, if you have very bright sun, you can use 22. But suppose a cloudy sky, you cannot go possibly beyond 11. Fine, even that will give you a very clear picture. So there is one more tool I'll speak at the next session. So today what we got, summing up, that if you want the background also to appear, we put a higher aperture, that is a smaller hole. If you want the background to be blurred away, this blurring away has a technical name. This is called bokeh effect, B-O-K-E-H, bokeh effect. That you have seen those pictures where the background is just some tinge of colors, nothing is visible. Those are so the higher the hole of your camera, you can have a better bokeh. So if you have a 2.8 camera, you will have a beautiful bouquet. If you have 1.4, if you will have even better. At least in 3.5, you will have a fairly good bouquet. So, but if you put a 22, you get a very clear background, distinct background. You use those higher aperture or smaller holes when to cover your object, and also your the background scenery, the hills, the mountain, the artifact, the monument, whatever. If you want the background to be taken in the picture to be clear, you use a higher aperture or a small hole. Thank you. This is for today.